Okay, and we are live, and this is NAHF. So, Natural Approach Health and Fitness is our Wellness Wednesday version of the show. It is sponsored by Successfully Chaotic, which is my podcast. And as you notice, I'm at my house today. So, I was telling Morgan before we went live that I had a kid with a bellyache this morning, and I was too nervous to take the kids to the babysitter. So, I'm doing it from here. Sometimes you got to be flexible. So, I did want Morgan to kind of dive in and introduce herself and what she does, and then we'll just have a great chat.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me here, Maria. So I'm Morgyn Danae, and I am a dance therapist, a somatic recovery coach, a holistic core specialist, and a choreographer, and a mental health advocate.
Which is and all of those things together, I think, are amazing. That was one of the reasons that I wanted to speak with you, is because it really does take that full, broad spectrum approach to create a whole and healthy human. And I think a lot of times people will have one aspect or the other that they're just naturally good at or naturally gravitate towards, but then it leaves the other side of that open. And really to be able to fully feel like, your true, authentic, healthy self, you need to have, all of those angles addressed. And I always talk about my wellness team because I have an entire team of people that I, work with. And, people that come to me for the things that I do in the wellness world, I tell them the same thing. You need to have a team.
Yes.
It's a team approach. So how did you get started in the wellness world? Can you kind of take us on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I've been around for a long time. I'll be 53 in April, so it's a long story, but going back. So I basically, I would say for sure from a child, I knew I was called to healing. I just felt that calling to support people, and it was a spiritual kind of child. So, and then in my 20s is when I got a lot more serious in my focus and in my practice. My own, personal healing process was kind of concurrent with blossoming into finding my way in working in wellness as well. And I really believe in that whole, adage of heal or heal thyself. So it was in my 20s, and I was working with a healer on myself and dealing with my own kind of physical issues that were manifesting from trauma and the need to heal and emotionally healing. So that was really informing me as well. I was learning a lot in that process. And then I started working. I was a dancer. I always loved to dance. And then I was really called to focus in on belly dance, studying belly dance at the time. And this was in the 90s. And I felt this calling to share it and teach it as a healing art. At the same time, I was studying the beginning of my kind of work with the center, with the belly, with the core, with the body, was working with a woman named Allison Post in Tucson, Arizona. This was all in Tucson, Arizona. And I was studying an ancient Chinese Taoist healing art called Qinei Song, or integrated internal organ massage. And she was also teaching us something she had developed called winding the belly, informed by it. And so that kind of started the ball of many years of then moving on to, continuing studies in different kind of disciplines and approaches around working with the center, with the belly, with the core, with the body. But so when I was working with dance, I was doing guided meditation and breath work, as well as with the body work as well. And that was also energy work too. So it was all kind of interspersed. And then, the studies and the unfolding just kind of continued for many years, as I was also, again, healing myself. So that's kind of where it started.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned, just organs and all the things that go on. I started thinking about, I did see on your website that you talk a lot about diastasis, which That's something that a lot of even MDs and obstetricians don't focus on. I've had 7 children, and I know
Amazing.
for me, yeah, I mean, for me, that was a big thing is, I got diastasis pretty badly. I had large children. My smallest was 8 pounds and 9 ounces, and my biggest was 10 pounds. So,
Yeah.
Obviously, that caused a lot of damage in my, in my abdominal region. And, for me, I actually started looking into the therapies related to that to heal myself. And so I think that is something that is super important to be able to, to teach and to train women specifically on how to do that. Is how did you get? Was you diagnosed?
I'm not sure what happened. Something got cut off. So it says I'm in the show. I don't see you anymore, Maria. I'm hoping that you come back. It looks like I'm going to go ahead and there we go. Looks like you came back. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I heard
my internet.
Oh, yeah, we never know, right? I know I was looking for my little banner to tell me my internet was but it sounded like you were wanting me to know if I had had diastasis or how I got
Yes.
Okay. No, I have not ever had diastasis. Basically working with diastasis was kind of part of an evolution. I mean, I work with, a lot of different issues with the belly, with the hips, and with the body and body image and all of that, digestion. So diastasis kind of came along in that process of working with people. And actually, I'm also a massage therapist. So in the past, I used to do a lot more professional massage, and it just seemed like in the different areas where I was working, when I was talking to women, it was coming up. I work with women of all ages, mothers and not, but I do have training with postpartum and prenatal work. So I did, really focus a lot with mothers, especially postpartum, for quite a while. It's still there. And in that, I just heard a lot of stories of women who were, women. Okay, well, let me back up. So I had been trained to work in as a doula in the past. I'm not a birth worker now, but it's part of my background. And just working with mothers, working in the birthing community, I started to hear about this. And then working with women of all different ages, doing the different disciplines that I do. They were telling me their stories, and so. One of the best ways to learn about anything, of course, is learning this from the stories of the people who are experiencing it. And I just kept hearing women really suffering and hear their stories about also being concerned and being scared about what was going on in their bodies, in some cases being in pain or having certain symptoms, but being told by the professionals who are supposed to be helping them these really harsh messages, like, first of all, either you don't have there's stop complaining, or there's nothing you can do, or no, you're not hurting. I mean, really intense disregard, as well as, or there's if there was even an option presented, it was your only option is surgery. So it's kind of like this kind of skimming, and if people are drawn to do the surgery, that's their choice. I just support people to have their relationship with their body and do what they need to do. It's none of my business ultimately, but at the same time, this was a real concern that was coming up. And so I really wanted to learn more about how I could help them, support them, and being called, just working with the core, with the belly, knowing this is such a pivotal, important area on so many levels, including in mental health. I sought ways to, I just looked for how I could study to help and get skills to, work with this specific kind of issue. And so then I was drawn to working with an amazing organization that I will always just have nothing but the best to say about an organization called Fit for Birth. James Goodluck is the founder and, CEO, I guess, of the company, and they're based in Miami. So I started being trained with that as a corrective exercise specialist, and in that, because it's so much around the belly and these issues, I worked with them to become a prenatal postpartum corrective exercise specialist. But actually, this applies men and women, mothers or not. You can get it. It's very prevalent in mothers. And then I went on continued studies to become a diastasis core consultant, our core and diastasis consultant, learning more about these different ways. So I had all my other, and then I've continued with the other work that I do and other studies and, learning about the energy of the belly, the chakras. I had that background with the internal organs, working with scar tissue, all of these things, and also trauma. And so I had that background with studying trauma and my own healing process with trauma, and knowing that that's another factor that I was conscious of. So I integrated that into my studies myself from my own, background stuff. And it's kind of, there's, so that started a while back. That was like, maybe I think it was about 10 years ago that I really started into those studies and that practice. And at that time, it didn't seem like many people were doing it and people knew much about it, or, and so it was kind of like, there was still a lot of distress about it, but not necessarily a whole lot of motivation to actually address it. So I just started doing that work, and I was doing that. I started it in Miami, and then I went back up to Portland, Maine, where my family is kind of based these days, and had a studio and worked with women a lot, focused there. And then came back to Miami again to work with some more studies and continued learning and studying. So these days, there's a lot more awareness, a lot more options, a lot of more people offering that work to support women to heal. And so a lot with mothers, again, postpartum, but it is also an issue that can happen when just with excess weight in general, sedentary lifestyle. It can also happen with over exercising, too much stress, too much tightness, holding the breath, over straining the core. And that's another, it's the both kind of ends of the spectrum. It's basically a dysfunction. It's an imbalance. And, there are still people who really just, only know about the surgery route. But what I say to anybody who is saying surgery or only knows about surgery or is considering it is just to know that there's still the whole factor of healing and strengthening your core based on the way you were designed by nature. And that is work that we have to do ourselves, if you choose to do it or not, Absolutely. But that's the work that we do ourselves to reclaim the natural design of our bodies, which is really brilliant and intelligent, and it may not be looking exactly the way you looked, or I don't predict that, but I say it's about coming back into the integrity of the way your body was designed, which is, you can't lose with that,
Absolutely.
So it can,
I agree.
Yeah. So if you're just focused on surgery, it can help you prepare for the surgery and help you recover as well.
Well, and that's kind of the thing with anything is, surgery is not the only option, but unfortunately, most of the time it's the only option that's given.
Yeah.
And, for me, I had to pretty much self-diagnose myself because nobody even knew what I was talking about. Nobody even knew, about that. And I think, like you mentioned before, it's becoming more prevalent, but it's still surprisingly something that a lot of people don't talk about. I've always been involved in the fitness world. I was a personal trainer and did MMA kind of in my former life. And
Very
so
cool.
I worked out all the time. So I very much, like you said, a lot of excessive exercise and stuff, my abdominals were hard as a rock. So you put a 8, 9, 10-pound child in there, and it's going to rip and tear. And unfortunately, what happens with, moms a lot of times is we're expected to kind of get back into the normal routines. A lot of women go right back to doing the same exercises, which just exacerbates the problem majorly. The same, crunches and sit-ups and all these exercises to get our abdominals back in shape just ends up making the problem worse. And,
Yes.
it's something that I've kind of become, as like at this point. So I've had to go through like every time, it would cause the problem to, open back up again. And I'd have to go right through the same therapies that I did before, but I didn't have to have surgery.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing is I'm not anti-surgery. I'm not anti-conventional medicine. I'm pro being proactive with your own body because, even people that have surgery, like you mentioned, they still end up having to do therapies. They still have to try to do things. So let's do it at the front end. See if you can avoid the surgery or prolong the surgery at least.
Yeah.
Because either way, you're going to be doing that therapy. And that's kind of been my, my mantra with all of it. So I love that that's what you teach.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great that you've done that work too. That takes a lot of commitment, I mean,
well, I think we need to commit to ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and I don't think there's any one size fits all thing. I think, the older I get, the more I realize that it's not so much about the six pack anymore for me. It's more about, remaining more flexible, staying, feeling great, feeling good in my own skin. I mean, there's little things that I've changed as far as my wellness and fitness routine goes, which is fine. You can change.
Yes. It's important to change, actually.
It is.
Yeah. To be in touch, to listen to what you need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's for me now, it's more therapeutic. Now it's more restorative. Before it was just hard and heavy, but that's not my mentality on things anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, I and that's kind of how I preach. There's different seasons in our life for everything. And for me, the season I'm in, as far as my own wellness goes, is very much restorative and prolonging and healing. And that's just where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And that's really an investment in longevity and quality of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier just about tapping into your energy. And that's, again, something coming out of the fitness world where I worked for a gym for many years, coming full circle to now, I am very much involved in yoga, very much involved in meditation, very much involved in energy work. It's actually kind of parallel universes a little bit. How did you get started with doing energy work and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So it's funny because I came into the fitness world from a spiritual background. And so basically energy work, really I would say consciously, again, I kind of been kind of consciously on a spiritual path my whole life, and really being aware of divine forces and nature. And my mother my mother's from London. My father's from the United States, but my mother was always in touch with kind of our mystical heritage, Celtic kind of heritage, ancient Anglo-Saxon, British gypsy. So that's kind of where that's where the seeds were planted. I have to honor my mother in that,
Yeah.
And so it was kind of being aware that there were other energies, other dimensions, and being aware of basically magic, not in that, reclaiming that word for medicine, for healing, for balance, for love, not manipulation or power over any of that stuff. But that was kind of where it started. It was the seeds were in my childhood. And so, and then, going into, again, still knowing my own need to heal myself, because there's all this love and magic in my family and in my childhood. And there was also trauma and abuse and, imbalance and such. Yeah. So, again, that parallel of seeking my own healing was where I was drawn to working with spirit, working with my soul, working with energy, working with divinity, with faith, not necessarily religion, but spirituality. So that was where it was rooted, in spiritual healing. And yeah. So that was, right. It really all started kind of opening up probably more in my late teens. But then again, like I said, in my 20s, and I was really more focusedly studying and kind of finding my way.
Like it took me quite a while to tap into that side of things. And I think I was raised Southern Baptist. Mm-hmm. So you think anything, you mentioned the word magic. And for the longest time, I thought that word was scary. It was terrifying to me because the way that I was taught, it represented evil. Mm-hmm. Anything, a lot of these definitions, like you mentioned, redefining the word, I think is so important because a lot of these definitions to things that we're taught isn't in reality what it is. And I think sometimes people can be so confused. And I was afraid of that side of things because it was the unknown. Mm-hmm. And even more than the unknown, I was afraid to learn about it because, it was quote unquote evil.
Yeah, sure.
So it took me quite a long while, even with my own trauma, to try to figure out that what was missing kind of in my life to help me heal was really within me the whole time. I just had to tap into it, but I didn't have, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have, the steps to take because I'd never learned them.
Sure.
And, that's kind of how it was quite, a little journey that I went on to kind of come to that side of it because, anything in that, woo woo world, was just kind of like, it seemed just so out there. But now, mm-hmm. Kind of being on this side of it, it's very much a part of everybody's reality. And, I think most people think it's like one side against the other, but really the reality is kind of the gray area, it's in the in between. And I've kind of found on my own journey that that's the reality really with everything. It's the same thing with even like the medicine world. You have like the alternative medicine side, and then you have the conventional medicine side, and they sit and want to war with each other about it when in reality it should be a balance. It's in the gray area. Mm-hmm. The alternative medicine side, let's try that way first. It's more natural. When that doesn't work, you do have this other side. So, I think it's very much kind of that idea of the yin and the yang. You really need both sides of everything to make it really work. And I think exactly. And I think a lot of confusion and, hurt and pain is because we keep trying to skip from one side to the other and we're not finding that middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I really hear what you're saying I think it's when it gets into the realm of extremes based on fear. Yeah. I feel like really if we're kind of slowing down enough to tune into and be present with what we actually are feeling called to, or just kind of getting into deeper wisdom. And that does require kind of a slowing down and tuning in, and also listening to our own inner guidance, listening, I believe in prayer and meditation. Again, that is universal, it could be practiced in any religion or not religion, just spirituality. But also, looking at what are your options, kind of not just going into reaction mode, but looking at what solutions are you being kind of, what is on the table to look at, to explore. And then then I think it's important for people to choose, how they want to do it, but maybe stepping back from the reactionary fear-based reactions to things, because that kind of makes it really, really difficult to get a clear understanding or even tap into that really clear direction,
I agree with that. I'm agreeing with you on the fact that, the extremes, like, for example, I use this analogy that, I'm very much like, I'm a certified herbalist. I love herbs. We try to do lots of things natural. But if I go outside and get in a car accident today, I don't want somebody out there rubbing herbs on me, right? Mm-hmm. Take me to the hospital, triage the situation, and I think that the problem ends up being that we're only focused a lot of times, like you mentioned, on the fear or on, the worst case scenarios of both sides, when many cases with some of these things, there are kind of positives on both sides. There's some things there's not positives on both sides, but for many things there are. And I think it's the same thing, even, with talking, your wellness, there are times where surgeries can be necessary. Somebody's appendix bursts. There's times you can heal the appendix, but once it's burst, it's burst.
Mm-hmm.
So there's times that, that's very much necessary. So I agree with you.
It's interesting you say that about, surgery has come up here. And I think for me, in my experience and understanding of what I've, worked with working with people with surgery, my main, again, I like you, I'm a proponent of but it's people's choice, really is. To do what you can naturally and taking responsibility for your health and learning and doing what you can to bring your body into balance naturally first. And also dealing with emotional issues, trauma, all that, because that affects our health too. That affects our bodies and can actually, create all kinds of symptoms too.
Absolutely.
Surgery isn't going to get to that root that needed to be healed, but nevertheless, but my main concern that comes up for me with surgeries and that I work with people on is how so often there's not a real understanding before going into it of the impact of surgery and support and information in how to rehabilitate after surgery, whatever that surgery might be. And I've seen a lot of situations where people have suffered because of the scar tissue, or sometimes the surgery, certain things happened that left the body out of balance that weren't so good, didn't have to happen. And then, but it's still getting those things addressed so that, say, the hips come back into alignment, the scar tissue gets addressed so that you're not having all there's so many symptoms that can happen with unaddressed scar tissue. And so often people don't know that scar tissue is a natural, adhesions are a natural healing response to the body when it's cut, that's the body trying to reheal it. But what happens if you don't work with the scar tissue and help to resolve it, it starts to attach onto different things and create
it turns into concrete.
Issues. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And that has so many repercussions. And speaking of mothers, that's a big thing that can happen with C-section, that women don't have that information. I've seen it with tummy tuck too. So not to scare people, but to say, I encourage people to have the awareness that surgery is impacting. It's impacting on your nervous system, on your energetic field. So prepare yourself.
Absolutely.
And then afterwards, get support to heal and address these things with people who are looking for the signs and can help you assess what the impact, so that you have even more effective surgery. Your surgery is that much more effective because you're actually having a rehabilitation process afterwards and a recovery process. So that's what I would say about it.
No, I agree 100%. And I think you mentioned symptoms. A lot of times, a lot of these, things that we look at as illnesses or problems are that they're symptoms. It's our body trying to talk to us and tell us something is just not right. Yeah. And, a lot of times, especially in this country, in the US where we're at, it, ends up being, oh, I have a headache, let me take an Advil. But the problem is that your body didn't have the headache because of the lack of the Advil. Your body had a headache for a reason. So what's the reason? Let's address that. Yeah. Was it dehydration? Was it?
It's just a huge one. Dehydration causes so many different symptoms and issues that people sometimes even end up getting surgery, but all they really needed to do was drink water. It's intense. That's yeah.
And it's, and I think that's the thing is that, we ignore these little warning lights that our body sends off until it becomes a big blaring problem. But, the entire time our body's trying to get our attention to say, hello, there's something going on. You need to address it.
Yes. Because our body is intelligent. And so it's coming from that foundation to recognize developing that relationship with our body. It's not some separate thing. It's not something we throw around or we just adorn or, beat up because it doesn't look the way we want it to look, or, do all these. Yeah. This is ourselves. This is, it's also it's your soul. Your body's your soul and your mind too. Even though it's different aspects, it's still all it's all connected. And to befriend our bodies and to listen to them as wise beings and to learn to tune into them, which is a practice, is really powerful. Absolutely. Yeah, to tune in. And our society doesn't encourage that, but we can do it. We just have to take a stand that we're going to do it, because that helps society along too. I don't really encourage anybody to take the standards of society as their benchmark for wellness. You're going to be making kind of choices against the grain to really choose wellness.
And it is a journey. It's very much, we say wellness journey for a reason, because depending on where your feet are planted right now, your journey is going to look a little different. And, I mentioned earlier that, my idea of fitness and wellness was literally abusive to my body. It was more is better. And, I would work out with all my clients, and literally way too much. I was living on my youth at that point. And, it's funny, as you get older, you start to realize some of these aches and pains I gave to myself, some of these, my right knee issue, I gave to myself, a lot of these things start to catch up. And I think I have found with a lot of women that I work with, particularly, it tends to be kind of one and the same, that when we're younger, we can get by with some of these things that aren't necessarily wonderful for our body, but, we're young at the time, our body's new, so we can get up with it. But as we get older, some of those things start to creep up on us. And I think for a lot of women, that's when they're like, oh, I better start doing something about this, because, what was working is not working. And then it's funny, because for me, I look back and really it wasn't working then either. It's just, I was so young, I didn't even notice,
Yeah. No, it's true. It's just like accumulation. It's like, for example, if you just don't wash your car or do your laundry or clean your house or do maintenance on your house, of course, over time, it's going to, start to fall apart. So it's really important. It's great to start at any point. If you're 80 and this is your point where you're starting,
Absolutely.
Perfect. That's perfect. Any place in the present moment is the perfect time. And we give a gift to the youth, by teaching them how to take care of themselves early. And, I was blessed to have a teacher when I was 30, spiritual teacher, who said, start it now, and the more that we can embody that and share it with those around us and the youth, to start to create a different kind of society that's not just based on fads and looks. Beauty comes with health. I just think we're naturally beautiful. And so when we're happy and healthy and being ourselves, we just are beautiful, and beauty standards are a whole other thing, because those come and go, they change all the time. So, be yourself, basically, but express yourself too. Whatever,
I agree.
It's fun to do things and stuff, but if it's based on this kind of foundation of self-love, that we're really valuing ourselves and who we are. And so when we do that, we're helping to shape another reality for the youth and for the coming generations.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that kind of goes back to full circle of what we've been talking about. And to really be able to do that, we need to start listening to our body, listening to our thoughts, really tapping into, who we are, what do we truly want, what truly makes us happy, because it's kind of one big broad spectrum. Because if you feel like crap because you're not, feeding your body correctly, moving your body, trying to relax. That was one of my biggest things. I had no problem working out. I had no problem eating healthy. My problem was rest.
Yeah.
I did not rest.
It's huge. Our society does not encourage that. And that's kind of like, it's kind of like masculine and feminine expressions. We have the masculine and feminine inside of us. And then, we might resonate with, I have more this kind of energy, whatever. But every human has the masculine and feminine inside of us. But we've just been so skewed to an imbalanced masculine. Of course, the masculine in its essence, when healed, is sacred and healed. But there's also the imbalance and the toxicity, just like with the feminine, losing its power, all of the different symptoms and facets of an imbalanced feminine and a toxic feminine, I will say, is not the truth of the feminine when healed, which is divine feminine, you know, but our society has been so skewed towards masculine values and kind of patriarchal values. It doesn't do anybody any good. It's not like, you know, it's really healthy for anybody, you know? So when we can come into the balance and, you know, we're really being called towards slowing down and listening within and honoring the body, it's very much the kind of divine feminine, you know?
Absolutely.
And so, so it's just finding that balance. And honoring
And it
the
takes
body
time.
is a huge thing. Yeah, it takes time, and you know what? Sometimes it takes a huge health scare.
Yeah.
You know, it could be a physical health, a mental health scare, whatever. That's often when we really start to make changes, when we're up against the wall.
Yeah. Which
You know?
is true for anything. There's usually a big
Yes.
catalyst that causes us to do whatever.
Yeah.
It's just how, you know, how that goes. So you mentioned earlier just about trauma and kind of your experiences, and I've had my own traumas, and I'd say most, if not all people have had some level
Sure.
of trauma. Obviously
Yeah.
that changes, you know, depending on, you know, what goes on, but you know,
Yeah.
trauma is trauma. And I always say, you know, pain is pain, and it's going to be different, you know, depending on the person, obviously.
Yeah.
But what really kind of guided you to work with people just, you know, professionally? Was it more just trying to help people, you know, physically feel better, or was it more kind of tapping in to helping them heal from a trauma, or was it kind of just a combination of both?
Well, it's interesting. That's a great question too. It really is a combination, again, because my kind of foray in training into healing started with the foundation of spiritual work, spiritual healing, in which the body was fully integrated into that, and healing one's pain in their heart, in their being, in their spirit, you know, emotionally as well. I witnessed in my own process and in others the physical transformation happening, things healing, you know. And my calling was to be working with the body. Obviously, I work with the body, dance and fitness and breath work and, you know, all the different things, but it's with a spiritual foundation, you know. And so it all kind of came at the same time. But it was made very clear to me that I was called to work with movement,
Absolutely.
in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love that. So tell everybody that's listening right now, like if they want to find out more about, you know, what you do, and where can they find you?
Okay. Yeah. So I have a website, morgyndanae.com, and morgyndanae.com. And I also am on Instagram, Morgyn Danae Wellness. And also, I mean, in my Instagram, on my profile, I have a link tree link as well.
Okay.
That has, you know, a list of different things. For those who are wanting more information or understanding, it's a good idea to look at the website, you know, because Instagram will give you a nice little taste, but the website can kind of give you more in depth. But also, if you know you're feeling drawn to potentially working with me, I do offer a free 30-minute, you know, virtual consultation as well, phone or, you know, video. And I'm also on Facebook and on LinkedIn under Morgyn Danae. LinkedIn, Facebook, I'm on Morgyn Danae or Morgyn Danae Wellness.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So real quick before you go, what are some things that people may notice maybe within themselves that would kind of signal to them that they're ready to reach out and work with somebody? Is there like kind of a few warning signs that you see people come to you with more often?
A lot of the time it's a desire to feel better. You know, it's a desire for change, a desire to feel better about oneself, you know, to feel more love for yourself and to understand how to take care of yourself. And there are, you know, different vehicles for doing that. Of course, it can be through dance.
Yeah.
It can be through the fitness movement, the breath work. Sometimes it is a kind of a feeling of disconnection and disempowerment from the body. it could be through the core, feeling like you can't get that access to that, you just don't know what to do. You don't know how to heal or treat or get strong, and you're trying to figure it out yourself. It's just not working. I also work with, and we work with the body as well, and lifestyle, and I call it mental health lifestyle, really. Working with your mental health, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, having past history of abuse or trauma, and really wanting to develop a healthy lifestyle, and perhaps grow creatively as well in expressing yourself. So those kinds of things, just feeling like you want to learn another way, because what you've been doing up until now is just not working.
And I think many women, many people find themselves in that exact place. And, like we mentioned before, sometimes it takes a huge catalyst, or sometimes it's just a feeling that something's missing, something is not right.
Mm-hmm.
So like I kind of implore anybody that's listening right now, if you're kind of stuck in this motion of just, not really getting the happiness from life that you should be getting, or so maybe that's kind of more of a, a mental type of issue, or maybe like Morgyn mentioned that, you're working out, you're trying to get, back in shape after having the kids, and something's just it's not clicking. And I know for me, I know the feeling, because I even knew, professionally how to get back in shape. And it was still so hard. I just remember it was before I even knew what diastasis was, because it's not something many people are taught. It's a whole separate thing you have to learn. Mm-hmm. And, I just remember thinking that I could feel how broken it was. I felt like I was rolling over, something. It just like my abdominals, because your abdominals obviously shaped kind of like an accordion. I just remember thinking it's just not, I could tell there was something broken, because it was broken.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And it affects the chakras and the organs and the pelvic floor, everything. Yeah.
And I think,
you can feel that.
Absolutely. And I know there's somebody, if she's listening right now, she actually reached out to me the other day, and I think I'll make a connection, because I think it'll be good for you to talk to her. I know her pretty well, but I think it's sometimes good to hear things from other people too, because, she is involved kind of in some fitness classes, and it's very masculine variety. And when they're doing specific exercises, she mentioned that they had said some things to her, but she's had several kids, definitely has diastasis, and she's having a hard time doing it. And they just like, oh, you can do it. Oh, you can do it. And I was like, that always baffles me when they do that, because if somebody had a torn ACL, they wouldn't be saying, do those squats. It's okay. You've got a torn ACL, do those squats.
Right.
But it's literally, it's torn abdominal muscles.
Yes.
So, it's only doing nothing but making it worse, making, it so much worse. And it's frustrating, because there still is kind of this disconnect in the fitness industry, honestly, as well as the medical establishment. A lot of my OB, I told my OB that I had it. She had never even heard of it.
Right.
So, I think there's still this disconnect. And so I think that's why it's so important to have a full wellness team, because, there's so many specialties within the wellness world, that it's so important to have somebody that you can reach out to for the specific needs that you have of that moment. So I always implore on people, build your wellness team, build it with people that, number one, are open to listening to what your problems are. If somebody's not willing to listen to you, that is a big warning sign right there.
100%.
And I just implore you kind of reach out. And so I'll make sure I did put your website in the notes or in the comments here, so that way they can click on there. And there's a lot of info on there. I kind of went over it before we had our chat today.
Thank you.
It's been
much.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, you too, Maria.
And I'm sorry about my internet. My internet is, I live in the middle of nowhere, so my internet is very lacking out here.
It's nice to live in the middle of nowhere. And then, but you know what? We all know at this point that the internet can go out at any time, and we just go with the flow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's so funny is I actually here in my house, I have two separate internet services just to have crappy internet, but that's just so we can do anything. So I was like, I pay double to have this internet here, So it is what it is. That's life. You go with the flow sometimes, and It's funny. That's actually what my podcast was named after. It's called Successfully Chaotic, because life's chaos and we're all just kind of trying to figure out our way. And I've had to come to the point that I can't get all tied, out of whack about things that happen and change, because that's just part of life. Like I mentioned, I have 7 kids. Chaos is inevitable.
I mean, that's just amazing right there. Just right there. That's all you would even need to say. And I know you do so much more that's amazing on top of that. But that's incredible.
Yeah, don't trust me. I fall on my face quite often. I'm just like, well, there you go. You have to have a sense of humor in life. It's how it goes.
Gosh, yes. Otherwise, why? Yeah,
I know. So, but I've appreciated you being on today, and we'll stay in touch. And I'll connect you with the person that I was telling you about. I think that you all would, hit it off. And
cool.
And I will talk to you soon. And for everybody that's tuned in today, thank you so much for listening. And you can find our main podcast on Successfully Chaotic. You can listen to it on any of your favorite podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, and all the other places. And make sure that you check out Morgyn Danae's website, www.morgyn, Morgyn, Danae, Danae.com. And until next time, thanks so much. And then we'll wave because I didn't hit the button in time. So